1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, a specter haunts the Philippine metropolis, and that specter is that of colonialism that is actually hidden and shrouded deep within our architecture amidst the facade that we see of what we call beauty, which in reality was indoctrinated and ingrained upon us by foreign institutions. Behind all of this alleged modernity and taking apart the glitz and glamour of these particular cities that they have on the outside lies structural inequality and inaccessibility, which is a result of poor urban planning when we actually form fit. Meaning, we copy-paste something that worked abroad, hoping and expecting that these things are going to necessarily work here. This cookie-cutter approach is exactly what we regret, and we think that it leads to a host of problems from traffic, over-congestion, and gentrification. More on that later in my argumentation. Here are a couple of features we think are relevant for this debate. Number 1, this is a regrets motion and it's retrospective, meaning we're historically going to examine what the development transplant has done and what the implications of that are. Make no mistake, right? This is not a debate about BGC and the like being nice or not, nor is it about modernity being good or bad. This is uniquely about resource planning and allocation and urban planning as a strategy. Meaning we have to lock into the word primary, and we think that on our side, sure, we can still have bits and pieces of particular technology and influence, but it shouldn't, and we regret it being the overarching narrative and methodology in terms of being able to develop our particular city. Second, let's be clear. What exactly is our counterfactual? A couple of things, right? A, the promotion of Philippine architecture, meaning all of the grand plans we had in the past, like Baguio being the cable car city of Asia, or if you've watched the movie Kingdom in the MMFF last year, the diversity and beauty of the Philippine Federal Maharlika state and how that would look like aesthetically and in terms of execution. The counterfactual is marching to the beat of our own drum and being able to fulfill these particular standards, rejecting all this Marina Bay Sands bullshit because gumana siya, it worked in Singapore, in Tokyo, etc. We think that a lot of these things are already over congested and overdone, and we think ultimately we support those particular things. B, we think that this also primarily means using and listening to Philippine engineers and architects who we otherwise would lose to brain drain, given that a lot of these people, because we aren't listening to their plans and stuff when we copy-paste, or we have a joint venture or public-private partnership with foreign entities like the Koreans, the Japanese, the Americans, the Europeans, they end up fucking off and going elsewhere at the point in which they become an OFW. We need to be able to get those particular people back, and we think that on the comparative, being able to do that, we're able to listen to them. C, and most importantly, just a better sense of urban planning, wherein it's bottom up from the state or the city center, as opposed to it being implemented top down, wherein we copy paste something, even if it's nuanced, being charitable to the other side and hoping and praying it works. Simply put, these are different things, apples and oranges. Before that, opening up, go for it. No worries. PY, yeah.
We also regretting instances when Philippines borrow funds from institutions like Bretton Woods institution or ADB.
For that to be in line with our principle, we say yes, right? At any point wherein we give too much slack to a foreign particular institution to the point that they have influence or leverage over us is something we're willing to contend with, to be principled to our case. We think that, of course, on our side, we can still get a host of funding, not just from these guys, but from our Central Reserve and Federal Bank, or even international loans, etc. Again, the nuance, like I said in my pre-oration, is to primary strategy. What is the case coming from Prime Minister? I'm going to examine the harms that development transplant uniquely has on the metropolis and the impacts of this that we've seen for us to be able to make a historical accounting to say that we regret it. The first layer of analysis here is to understand the rising prices and inflation that affect the quality of life of particular individuals and people. Meaning, if you take a look at the graph and take a look at all of these particular areas we've done a development transplant for, uniquely these things are very, very expensive and actually overpriced, to the point that it boxes out the average middle class individual for being able to purchase or live or even work there, which ultimately box out the sense of opportunity. This is particularly because the developers, who often are foreign entities, even if they work with Filipinos, uniquely make it very inaccessible at the point in which all of these things are just westernized and whitewashed. Meaning, yeah, it looks good, but in terms of functionality, same thing. But it's like 10 times, 20 times, sometimes even 30 times more expensive than the average plot of land, either buying or renting. The second here, ladies and gentlemen, is that you assassinate culture, ethnicity, and identity, and there's just no soul. The intuition pump here is simple. How come when we go to Europe, for instance, if you've traveled or seen particular things there, it looks so beautiful compared to like Tokyo and Seoul, who like don't have a soul, ironically? It's because of the architecture deeply rooted in things that they've gone through in their past, which otherwise are not present at the point in which we just genuflect to whatever foreign ideology or standard we have. The comparative is simple. If we're able to do things bottom up, it creates an incentive structure for people to be able to build these particular things and ultimately influence these things and whatever Filipino architecture would look like. I'd imagine certain Spanish influences, maybe to an extent, but more on how this became developed into the Filipino, as opposed to just copy-pasting all of these things and expecting all these cities to look the same. Third is that it leads to a host of harms, things like traffic and over-congestion, to the point that people and opportunity become so concentrated here, but the surrounding areas just aren't ready for the urban planning, at the point in which we lack public transport, we lack all of these particular things. So, they claim this to be a beautiful gem in the middle of Manila, but in reality, this becomes a hotbed of the inability of people to actually live, reside, do business there. It makes it harder. We think we should regret it. We are very proud to open this debate from side government. Thank you.